Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special session in which we're really honoured to host two speakers, Jerry Meisel and Esther Marcus from Alumim, the Kibbutz Alumim in the south of Israel. The title of this evening is From Hamas Terror to Resilience, Renewal and Rebuilding. And before I say anything else, thank you very, very much to Michelle Sint for putting this together and bringing the program together. Really appreciate that. And of course, our primary expression of respect, salute, and appreciation to our honoured guests, to Dr. Jerry Meisel and to Ms. Esther Marcus. The format of the evening will be really the idea of this evening is a session to let us know about the experiences on the 7th of October of Kibbutz Alumim, the immediate aftermath, but also how they're gaining strength and preparing for the future with dreams of future improvements and please God, rebuilding and renewal. And the format will be about 40 minutes or so. I think first Jeremy speaking for perhaps 20 minutes or so, and also taking some time for questions. And I think the focus when Dr. Meisel speaks will be on account of the kibbutz and maybe a little bit of background and history leading up to the events of the 7th of October. And then I'll introduce Esther later and speak about some of her work in the resilience and rebuilding. Dr. Meisel, who we really thank you for joining us this evening and appreciate the opportunity you're giving us to hear and understand a little bit better. Dr. Meisel has a long career in Jewish and Israel education, both as a practitioner and an academic with a variety of teaching and management roles. Has been a member of Kibbutz Alumim for many years. And over to you, Dr. Meisel, to share with us some of the backgrounds and context. Thank you so much for that again.
Thank you very much, Diane Zobin. Thank you very much for everyone coming and joining us. I'm going to share with you a few sort of scenes, pictures, what was going on the 7th of October. I tried to get things in some sort of semblance of order, but it was a very chaotic, traumatic, jarring experience. So forgive me if things aren't completely sorted and logical and follow a strict chronological order. Maybe a little bit of background about Kibbutz Alumim. Kibbutz Alumim is a Bnei Akiva kibbutz set up in 1966 on the site of another kibbutz, religious kibbutz, Be'erot Yitzchak, which was set up in the 1940s. And they managed to fight off Egyptian attack during the War of Independence. And the reason why Alumim is there is because we farm the fields of Be'erot Yitzchak. I came on Aliyah in 1984, 39 years ago, October 1984, came straight to Alumim. Alumim is a small, close-knit, multi-generational, collective, religious, agricultural kibbutz, about 100 families. And being on the Gaza border, we're very well acquainted with color red alarms. The alarm goes off, we all run into the protected room. Usually after 6 or 7 seconds, we hear an explosion and then we go out again. And that's what happened at 6:30 on Shabbat, Simchat Torah, 6:30 in the morning. We heard color red alarms. We also heard the noise of the intercepts of the Iron Dome station, which is stationed right by the kibbutz. So we hear the launch of the Iron Domes to intercept the Qassam missiles, a very, very prolonged barrage. Because we're in danger, people can open their phones despite being Shabbat, Pikuach Nefesh. And we got instructions to stay in the protected rooms, which has happened before. About half an hour later, about 7 o'clock, we get another message to stay in the protected rooms, to lock the doors of the houses, to stay in the protected rooms. There's a threat of terrorist infiltration. And after another hour or so, we get another message: terrorists are in the kibbutz. Stay inside, lock your doors, stay inside the protected rooms. Inside my house was my wife, Debbie, my eldest daughter, Reut, my son, Nadav, and his wife, Sarah. In another house on the kibbutz was my other son with his wife, Reut, and their 1.5-year-old daughter and their 1.5-month-old baby, also in their protected room. And in another house was my youngest daughter, also, well, she was alone in a protected room. What was going on outside? Well, sorry. First of all, let's explain what I thought, what we thought. When we heard that there were terrorists inside the kibbutz, we know there's a kitat kononut, an emergency squad. They're sort of our security first responders, and they're activated. And our assumption was that a few terrorists had got over the border, over the fence, and the kitat kononut, the security squad, will deal with them. And in an hour or so, the whole of the might of the IDF will descend on Kibbutz Alumim, helicopters, finish off the terrorists, and in a few hours we'll be out. And that was my assumption throughout Shabbat. We did hear gunfire, but we didn't know of the extent of what was happening outside. At one stage, at about 1 PM, there was another message saying that there was another attack from the direction of the avocado plantation to stay inside. We stayed inside, and further on, later on in the afternoon, we got more messages that the army was now sweeping through the kibbutz, making sure house to house that there weren't any terrorists left. Afterwards, I learned what was going on outside. The emergency squad, which is 12 members of the kibbutz, they immediately, when they heard this barrage of missiles, they went out and they got their guns, and there's a command post in an air raid shelter by the dining room, which has cameras around the kibbutz. And the people who went to look at the cameras were directing the emergency squad. They could see through the cameras that first about 10 terrorists on motorbikes entered from the back gate of the kibbutz and went round to the front gate of the kibbutz. And they directed the security squad to there. On the footage, we can see that the terrorists got to the front gate. They started firing outside the kibbutz towards the road. The road is the road going north from where you must have heard about the big music festival that was going on. People escaping the music festival were going past the entrance to the kibbutz, and the terrorists were just firing on them when they went by, trying to kill them. Another camera saw a terrible scene. People trying to escape, coming up towards the gate of the kibbutz, stopping the car. The gate was shut because it was Shabbat. Getting out of the car, just sitting by the road. And then you see them suddenly get up and run across the camera into a field. And seconds later, you see a terrorist running after them, shooting at them. Another attack on the kibbutz. There were 8 attacks in total. another attack on the kibbutz targeted the accommodation of the foreign workers, the foreign farm workers. There was a preliminary attack, and one of the emergency squad, a medic, ran to them to try and give them help. He was unarmed. He saw that they needed to be evacuated, and he ran back to get a car. When he tried to get back to them, there were already terrorists shooting there, and he had to escape, run for his life. He hid, and he managed to escape. The terrorists cold-bloodedly, brutally slaughtered 20 foreign farm workers, 10 Nepali students who were studying agriculture and working as a practical experience alongside members of the kibbutz, and 10 Thai workers, just slaughtered for no reason. Tens of terrorists attacked Alumim. After the 7th of October, they counted 40, 50 bodies of terrorists inside Alumim. And this emergency squad, they really saved our lives. One of the guys in the security squad, Amichai, got bullets and shrapnel in his arms. Another guy, Ayal Young, a bullet went through his cheek and lodged behind his ear. Another bullet went into his shoulder, through his lungs and out of his back. And there was another bullet which was lodged in his back. They brought these wounded people to the nurse's house. The nurse on Alumim, she's a midwife and a nurse on the kibbutz, and she was in contact by phone with our doctor, who is also head of the emergency room at Soroka Hospital, a big hospital in Beersheba, and he was giving her instructions how to treat the wounded. But they decided that Ayal had to be evacuated. Now, Magen David Adom, the ambulances couldn't come to us. It was a battle. So guys from the emergency squad just got cars, put them in. One of them sat on the back with a gun out of the back, and they evacuated them under fire to Netivot. And then they came back to fight, to carry on fighting. Another guy, Iran, had 3 bullets in his thigh. As I mentioned, at about 1 o'clock, there was an attack from the direction of the avocado plantation. There's a couple of Vatikim, the older people on the kibbutz, 78-year-old Benny Miller and his wife Tzipi were at home in their protected room. The terrorists threw a rock through the glass back door. Benny came out. The terrorist shot him twice in the stomach from 1.5 meters. And then he left. The terrorist left their house, don't know exactly why, and he was killed by Captain Itai Cohen, who was killed by the terrorists in the gunfire. He lost his life defending us. Benny went back into the protected room, told his wife Tzipi to call the emergency squad. He's been shot. And they called the emergency squad. The guy from the emergency squad got to his house, walked in, he said, what's happening, Benny? So Benny said, I'm okay, I've just been shot. So they couldn't evacuate him on the peripheral road because it was right by where the shooting was. They put him on his mobility scooter and drove him to the center of the kibbutz with 2 soldiers in front, 2 soldiers behind. And again, he was evacuated under fire towards Netivot and Beersheba. All of the wounded from the kibbutz are recovered. Benny is now in the hotel with us. He looks remarkably well. Ayal Jung, the one who had 3 bullet wounds, he's okay. He had an operation on Friday to remove the bullets. And really, if I try to understand what happened on Alumim, how we survived, it's a mixture of luck, siyata dishmaya, divine help, and just the incredible bravery of the emergency squad. During the morning, various bits of army units joined in the fight because Alumim is sort of in the northern section of the communities on the Gaza border. So a lot of them couldn't get down to help Be'eri or Niroz. They came into the battle when they came to Alumim, but only at 3 in the afternoon, the army took over officially the battle scene. So at 1:30 at 12:30 in the morning, we got the message to get ready to pack. We're going to be evacuated at 3. That took longer than was expected. There was a message for people with cars and guests who had been on the kibbutz. They were evacuated at 8:30 on Sunday morning. Eventually, the kibbutz is evacuated around 2:30 on Sunday morning. Our daughter, who had been alone in her protected room from the morning until about 3 o'clock when the army transferred her to another protected room, she couldn't take it anymore. So we just got a car at 11 o'clock and left, and then we joined the kibbutz. The whole kibbutz was evacuated to Netanya, us, including the rest of the foreign workers who were, I can't imagine what they'd been through. Just a couple more points. My time's running out. Alumim was remarkably fortunate compared to other communities. Our dear neighbors on Kibbutz Be'eri, 130 members of the kibbutz were killed. Niroz, a quarter of the kibbutz is murdered, missing, or hostages in Gaza. I'd like to mention, and it's important to me to mention 3 guys who fell in the war. First of all, Nitai Amar from the kibbutz, a young guy in his early 20s, who, as soon as the hostilities started, before he was officially called up, he went to join his unit, and on the battle on the road, he was killed. Shachaf Bergstein, another son of Alumim, in my daughter's class, in my daughter's age group. He was with us for Hakafot on Friday night, and then he went back to where he lives on Kfar Aza, and he was killed on Kfar Aza. And just a couple of days ago, we heard about Uri Amash, who was grew up on the kibbutz, 41-year-old guy who, although he wasn't obliged to go to Miluim, he volunteered to go to Miluim, and he was killed. 41-year-old guy with 6 children. Terrible. People ask, what can we bring you? Or what can we do for you? And when I say I'm alive, my wife's alive, my children are alive, their partners are alive, and our beautiful granddaughters are alive, there's nothing that can top that. And at that point, they usually break down in tears. But really, we're very, very fortunate. So I think now is a good time to pass over to Esther, who's an expert in giving people strategies and learning how to cope with these very extreme circumstances that we find ourselves in. So passing over to Esther. Thank you.
Wow, I have to say it's always hits you in the face whenever you go back over the story again and again, and then you hear it from somebody who I'm seeing pretty much every day or having breakfast with. And every time you hear the story and you go back to it, it's shocking. And I don't actually think there's no way I've completely absorbed what happened, which is part of what resilience is all about. We all have a certain level of denial. We have all kinds of defense mechanisms that help us. And it's just too much to take in one go. Just to go back a little bit with my own experience, and I live just a few doors away from Jeremy. We were in the house, myself, my husband, my married daughter, husband, also 2 babies, and my recently married son and his wife. My son-in-law has a pistol, and he spent most of the time with his hand on his pistol and the other hand holding the lever of the door, because you can't lock yourself in the safe rooms because that's not safe, which is crazy, but that's how it is. He, I think, fully understood the situation. It took me a while. Part of my job in the Resilience Centre is that I immediately take on the hotline. So if anybody's in distress anywhere in our area, I can answer, and I can have one of my members of one of my team phone them back to help calm them down. At 7:14 in the morning, I received a message from my colleague, my friend, and she's from Kfar Aza, which is down the road. And she said to me, Esther, I'm here if you need me. I started referring calls to her and she wasn't responding. And it took a while to realize that there was a massacre going on in Kfar Aza. Needless to say, she died. Part of the huge anxiety was also the amount of time that it's taken to identify bodies. And it took well over a week that we received notification that she was definitely dead. A good friend of mine on the other side of us, Kibbutz Be'eri, that Jeremy mentioned, also my friend who I studied therapy with, also we knew she was missing, and learned last week that she has died. And with her, there wasn't even a body to bury. So it was a ceremony, 2 sons. So just these, it's just horrific, and it's too much to take in. And I say it specifically regarding them because I think that if you know one person, like we've all been through some experience in our life, maybe lost a parent, maybe even a sibling or a child, and that's hard enough. But when it's another one, and it's happening around you, it's just too much to take in. And a lot of the work that we're doing in resilience is just enabling people to accept that just being able to get up in the morning is okay. Just choosing to get up, choosing to get dressed, choosing to have a cup of coffee, putting one foot in front of the other, because you have to you have to be aware what you can and what you can't do. We also have to acknowledge fully that we're still in the situation. I go back to the day that we were in the safe room. I was receiving phone calls from people who live in the area, trying to understand what was going on. But mostly I was receiving phone calls from people around the country looking for their children who were at the party, and they had received a message or some call saying shooting, the chaos was enormous, and could I help them find their children? I did no idea. I hadn't been trained for that. What a massive massacre at a party. I'm starting to make phone calls. I get a call from a father of a 22-year-old who had locked himself in the toilet in a petrol station together with someone who'd been injured. And he's crying at me, you have to get the army out to him to rescue him. I call a contact that I have for the rescue service, and they just say, Esther, we're not going anywhere. We cannot get close to anybody because we can't put ourselves in danger, which, by the way, I later learned regarding the massacre of the Thailandian and the Nepalese workers that Jeremy discussed, that are Gilad, who went out there to try and help them, and he didn't have a gun, he just had a vest and a helmet, which was crazy. He just couldn't get there. There were too many terrorists. A couple ran out. They've been captured. They're in Gaza now. One guy actually managed to make it into the refit, into the cowshed, which is where my husband works. And he locked himself inside a fridge and somehow managed to make some kind of a bag, a system that he could keep breathing, because they were throwing grenades in and tires. The dairy parlor, just the whole thing was destroyed. But Gilad says how he saw the army on the other side and he's shouting at them, save them, save them, save them. And the army guys saying, no, we can't go in. It's too risky for us. It was just, and everything's happening in seconds. We watch these action films and then suddenly you're living in an action film. And this team that Jeremy mentioned as well, they had the most amazing strength and power. Again, part of my job for resilience is to do as much as possible to prevent post-traumatic stress disorder kicking in. And I served in the army as a mental health officer. So I know from my training there the importance of having people tell their story straight away, not necessarily touch on their emotions, but to help them point out to themselves how they did what they did was instinct, but it's also because they're trained and they made very good decisions very, very quickly. And that may mean that included in those decisions were that somebody else was sacrificed, because they now have to live with that. When I sit with them and I listen to them talking, and I'm in awe of them, and then I'm also at the same time in awe of their wives who sat in the safe room with 5, 6, 7 children, including babies. And I learned later that people put their babies, their children in the cupboard, in drawers. People didn't leave their room at all, not even to go to the bathroom. So they made a little corner in their safe room where they did what they had to do. There were people
not on Alumim, not that story on Alumim.
Yes, in Alumim, Jeremy. Yes, in Alumim. People did not leave their rooms. There were one family told me that they had nappies and the adults used the nappies because they didn't want to leave the room to go to the bathroom, or they found a bottle and they used the bottle. Slowly but surely, and this again is part of the resilience, is that we're building our collective narrative of what everybody went through. And also what's really important to know is when we were allowed to leave, straight away, many, many men were called up, what's called Sav Shmona. They had to go straight into Miluim, including my son and my son-in-law. And they had to then quickly organize themselves, where we're going to go, what's going to happen. So in these we've been evacuated before. If I take you back for a second to 2014, Suk Eitan, during that war, Alumim didn't leave at all. The idea was that we stay, we look after all these soldiers that have come to look after us. And I would say it was a very empowering situation. But ever since then, the army has decided that there's absolutely no way that we can stay nearby. We're almost a security hazard as well, and we have to evacuate the families. But I personally have never evacuated because of my job, because I have to stay nearby. And Stevie, because he has to look after the cows, he's also never evacuated. And the two of us were umming and erring, should we, shouldn't we? And it's only when my daughter literally was yelling down the phone and saying to me, do you want us to be orphans? Do you want to be also somebody else who's been killed? That something resonated in my brain that I knew that we had to get on that bus as well. And then once on the bus, again, phone calls, learning about Nitai, as Jeremy mentioned, had gone missing, building slowly but surely the picture of what was going on around us. And of course, thinking what might have been, what could have been, which drove me also to write a poem, which I will share if you're up for it. And all the kibbutzim, all on the border, we were all evacuated as soon as possible. I don't know who decided, why it was decided, but it was decided that we go to Netanya. We're now situated, our community, our kibbutz is situated in 2 hotels, a half an hour's walk, one from the other. And as I say, the first couple of days was getting people to talk, to say it out loud, hear themselves tell their story, share their story. We worked in groups, adults, children, teenagers, talk it, say it, and immediately appreciate something as well. And ever since then, we've been building resilience as it goes, one day at a time, one brick on top of another. I would say that for our kibbutz, people are at different stages. Some people are still in some level of shock. Some people are, trying to make sense of it all. It's an up and down. What I straight away noticed that within 48 hours, the older members of the community, the people 60 and above, they developed temperatures, they were throwing up, they had diarrhea, so their body was really speaking. Again, all we know, these are symptoms, the body and the soul are completely connected, but in the same way that the body, immediately when it's cut, starts to cure itself, we send, and Stephen will explain a lot better than me, that those little blood cells or the white blood cells, whatever, they're straight away coming in. It's the same with the soul. The soul is straight away trying to make sense of what's going on. We know that our brain is constantly processing. And when you're in fear, such fear, and I wish for you that you would never experience anything like this, but when you're in that kind of fear, your brain is no longer processing. So, but what happens to us is that we turn on like our emergency system. So yes, our blood pressure goes up. Yes, we're sweating. We lose our appetite. We have pains. But through the work that we've been trained to do in our resilience center is to help people see that that's very, very positive. I even noticed now just with Jeremy that you're sweating, which I completely relate to. Our body is expressing, and that is a good thing. What we need to know as far as resilience is concerned is what helps us get through something, what makes us stronger. So with the processing, we learn like tapping techniques to help get your brain moving again, or we know straight away to say to somebody, tell me your date of birth, tell me the names of your children, just to get their brain functioning. We can then move on to something else like movement, very slowly, just moving your arms around, spreading your fingers out, gentle movements, which when you think about it, when we have children, when we have babies and they learn to walk, they fall down, we're there for them. You can get up, you've got this. It's about giving support. It's about believing in people as well. And if there's one thing these years of working in trauma has taught me, it's a huge belief in us, in people, in human beings, in our ability to get on. For years before I worked in this resilience centre, I worked for many, many, many years, and still do, with both men and women who've been sexually abused, raped, incest, and again, they choose to get up every day and get on with their lives. And there may be things that obviously they're very challenged by, but they push through, and really that's what is so remarkable. I personally am in a situation, I mentioned it before, pretty much every day I'm hearing another story. Even today on Thursday night, oh, I didn't mention this before. Sorry that I'm backtracking. So we have our resilience centre, which is one resilience centre, and I normally see somewhere in the region of 200 people a week come to our centre because we're in this ongoing situation of rockets, etc., etc. And now, because we're all over the country, we've got members of our larger community in Eilat, Yam HaMelach, many hotels in Jerusalem, Herzliya, Netanya, far up in the north in a place called Migdal as well, which is overlooking the Kinneret, all spread around. So Thursday night, I was visiting one of the communities, because we're now setting up resilience centres everywhere that there's a community. They have to have now people that can help them, to give them therapy to get through what they need to get through. And I met a friend of mine, a lady called Shuli. She's a teacher in the school. I'm actually going to say something, Jeremy, I don't even know if you know this. She's a teacher. She told me that her daughter's with her, that her husband is fighting in Miluim. And I found out today that her husband was killed and the funeral was on Friday. And then I came back through another one of the communities where we were setting up the Resilience Centre, met another friend who told me that her husband, his brother, has been captive. They're from Kibbutz near Oz, and they're actually English speaking, they're American. I have a good friend also from near Oz. She's also a member of my team. Her sister's been captured. I went to visit her when I was in Eilat, and it's like being in a parallel world. You walk into this hotel lobby, which is surrealistic anyway, because it's a hotel. What do we relate hotels to? Going on holiday, pleasure, enjoyment. You walk into this, most of the hotels are chaos, mad chaos. This hotel, you feel like you've walked through some kind of time zone. People are just walking around and around and around. And my friend says, that lady over there pushing the pram with the baby, she's got 2 children in Gaza. That man over there, his mother and brother, they're in Gaza. That guy over there. And it's literally jaw-dropping. And again, these people are getting up. They are praying, they are hoping, they are pushing. And I think, and why this was so important for us, for Jeremy and I, and again, thank you to Michelle and anybody who is prepared to listen to our story and make a connection and make a contact, because we're suffering, we're in pain, I would say mourning. I don't think I've allowed myself to go to mourning, because I think I'm still somewhere in that level of shock. But at the same time, I'm scared that I'm sort of losing touch with my own emotions, but I'm also being empathetic. It's such a mishmash. But we have to know that everybody really cares about us, and everybody is like rooting for us and wants to be a part of what we're all going through. I remembered today that many years ago, when a group of journalists came to visit our kibbutz, I'm just going to slide in brackets here that a few years ago, I wrote a children's book. Jeremy mentioned Seva Adom. That's our alarm. We don't have a regular alarm because we don't have time for it. And I wrote a children's book which tells the story of Seva Adom, of our alarm. And I remember journalists saying to the kids on our kibbutz, it's been going on for years. Do you not get upset that the rest of Israel aren't really trying to make a change here and help you? Don't you want there to be alarms in the rest of the country as well? And I can remember a girl, she was maybe 10, and she said, why would I want their other children in Israel to suffer? Why would I want there to be alarms in other directions. And I thought, wow, just look how like the wisdom of our children. And that's another thing that we have to put up with is journalists, you know, digging and this business of retaliation. I myself was interviewed Australia, and the woman started saying to me, but, you know, don't you think Israel's going over the top, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth? And that's not our language. That's not how we speak. And obviously we see now that there is no one to communicate with on that level as far as the Hamas is concerned. And it's really important for me to point out to you that we used to have Palestinian workers in our kibbutz. We had a guy called Ahmed, he was our plumber. And when there was lockdown and they could no longer come into our kibbutz, a man from our kibbutz went every week and took a food package to Ahmed and met him at the fence, because we knew that he could not provide a parnasah for his family. And we have another man, and he volunteers for a special organization that meets children who come over from Gaza and they need special medical attention. He meets them at the border, them and their mother, their father, and he takes them to specialized hospitals so that these children can receive special help. And we are not those hateful people that they make us out to be, but we have to survive, and we have to protect ourselves, and we have to move on. And every day, my personal prayer is for myself that I can do a little bit more than what I did yesterday and what I did the day before. And each day brings new opportunities, a new chance to help people see what's putting them through. There were lots of references to the Holocaust, which I have to say I felt myself when we were told to keep our babies quiet. And then references came with pogroms. That was the next level. And now what we have to understand is that being evacuated is also causing a lot of problems. The hotels that I've been visiting, so there's already vandalism. Parents don't know where their children are. We've already had an attempted assault on a child in one of the cities because everything's like out of control. And we already lost control on that day. And now we're still losing control. So again, part of what we're doing in the resilience work is helping communities rebuild, finding out how you can take care of yourself. We're working on a project for Hanukkah where we're going to give out family gifts that are specialized for Hanukkah. So every day when they light candles, the family will come together, which is not happening now. Children are getting up at different times. Only now they're starting to put schools together, kindergartens together. It's crazy, crazy. So the idea is that Hanukkah, at least when you light your candles, and of course they don't have a Hanukkah because we left the house taking, I don't know, 2 pairs of jeans and a t-shirt, which made me remember, we used to, in Bnei Akiva, have that program. If you'll go to a desert island, what would you take with you? And we did those programs about Jewish identity and everything. And all of a sudden, they're coming into practice now. And only now I'm thinking, oh, it would be nice to have this. It would be nice to have a dressing gown. You walk around the hotels, you see a whole bunch of people walking around in their pajamas, which is most unusual. And you have to laugh a little bit, which is also important. So people don't have their own Chanukiah because they're at home. So in this kit will be a Chanukiah, the candles and gifts, so that every day they can be together and join. I feel like I've pushed too much time, so I can talk like my sister for hours and hours. That was something, yes, I saw that face. We can. That was a gift we received from our lovely, lovely mother, who was the epitome of resilience. Our whole story, the Jewish people's story, is resilience. It's about getting back up and getting on with it. And many people have said to me, especially people from Chutz La'aretz, we feel helpless. What can we do? Ein davar kazeh, there's no such thing as being helpless. We can all do something. If you keep us in mind when you daven, if you decide to give money to charity to support something, and it doesn't have to be Alumim, it doesn't have to be my resilience center, it can be anything. If you send somebody a message, someone you know whose son maybe is serving here in the army, and just keep sending the messages, just thinking of you. I've got a really good friend, she sends me a song every morning. I wake up to that every morning. And And that's what this is about. It's about us all pulling together and figuring out how to get through. And I have to say that I think of you when I see what you're going through in London with the Palestinians walking through the streets. They're violent, they're aggressive, and it freaks me out. I'm desperately waiting for the Jewish lords in the House of Lords to somehow get something moving there, but obviously that's more your department. And it's about us coming together. And I also really appreciate that you've given your time and that you're prepared to listen to our stories and not just rely on the news, which isn't always 100% correct and obviously has an angle. And we feel this really, really big connection. And it's not just Stephen or Michelle or Caroline or people that we know, it's now everybody else. And I really wish and hope for the day that you will come and visit us, please God. Please God, it will still be Alumim, which is another question. We don't know. We still don't know when we're going to go back. I mentioned before, and on another occasion, our parents used to live in Netanya. They also came in Aliyah. And I keep hearing my mother's voice. They have since passed away, so they're in the cemetery in Netanya. But I keep hearing my mother saying, now you come to live in Netanya? All those years I wanted you to be near me, and now you're here? But yes, we're in Netanya, and we may be there for a while. And we don't know what's going on. So we're still somewhat helpless, but we're not. That's the idea of resilience. I'm going to stop talking now.
Thank you. To both you, Esther, and Jeremy, I think thanks are too trivial and the wrong word to use. And we all are rooting for you. We care, and we don't have. Hearing secondhand what you're describing just leaves me speechless, and I'm sure all of us. But we do thank you for your bravery in sharing a little bit of what you've been through, and we really send out Philot, our love, our care, really from the bottoms of our hearts. And also I said to you before this, as we were talking a little bit before the sort of formal session started, to hear about your strength in and your work in setting up resilient centres with all over the place. And I think you're travelling now the length and breadth of the country trying to help people never give up. I do want to open the floor in a moment to questions, to both of you really. But just on a practical level, I certainly have been very moved, and I'm sure all of us, hearing about your Chanukia project and the resilient centre that centres now that you're setting up. Do you have a means to perhaps put in the chat a link where we can donate, or do you want to send me afterwards or via Michelle?
I'll send it to you afterwards, because we're working online, and as Michelle mentioned, I've actually learned to give out orders to my friends, and I have this team working on it, and hopefully within 24 hours they're putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you. So please do let us know.
I also want to mention that one of the gifts that we're giving is going to be a puzzle of a picture, and Kibbutz Be'eri next door to us, their printing factory is now underway, and they're going to be printing it, which is also giving them parnasa, that they're going to produce that for us.
Thank you. Just before I open the floor to questions, you mentioned a poem that you wrote, and forgive me, would you feel comfortable reading that? Is that okay?
Sure. The angel of death knocked on my door. He tapped on my window, dipped his fingers into my food, ran his nails across my spine. I saw his reflection in the mirror. Not today, Esther, not today. He moved on, dancing his distorted dance, roaring his evil laugh. He rounded up my neighbors, Nachal Oz, Be'eri, near Oz, Kfar Aza, filling his pockets with children, stuffing men, women, families into his backpack. He smiled his crooked smile at the soldiers who fought him and swooped them up with his fist. And I watched him go, discarding the shells of the souls he had taken. He turned and he waved. Not today, Esther. Not today. Not today. So if I'm alive, it's for a reason. We're alive for a reason, and we obviously have something that Hashem wants us to do, and so we have to do it.
Thank you. Esther and Jeremy, there are various messages of love and support in the chat of the Zoom meeting. Jeremy, because you handed straight over to Esther, I didn't get a chance, and just on behalf of all of us, also, you spoke really Dvarim Hayotzim and Alev, and for all of us to hear in that gentle way, you shared a little bit of the experiences, and again, we thanks are inappropriate, but we salute you and respect and care and just send love and tefillot. I'm going to spotlight both of you, if that's okay, and then hand over to people to ask questions. You can do so through 3 methods. You can either post on the chat to everyone and or privately to me, and I can read out your question, or as someone has done already. I'm trying to see. The shares have done already. You can post your hand. You can raise a hand using the Zoom feature. So I'm going to spotlight both of you, and please do raise your hand or post a question on the chat. But I'm going to hand over to the community, and Avram, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Sorry, and also to you. Enormously touched by what you said. Jeremy's my cousin. I don't know whether people knew that, but I felt immediately very touched by what he said. It's a practical question. I know that you've been trying to organize a way in which, on a helpful tax basis, money can be given to the systems that you're trying to set up in relation to Alumim. And I'd be grateful if you could put those on the chat so that everyone is able to see them as well.
Okay, well, I think the best thing we're going to do, I'm going to wait for Esther to arrange to update me with a link to her fundraising efforts for these Hanukkah kits for families. On Alumim, we're trying to look towards the future to maybe an ambitious goal to try to make Alumim an attractive and viable place for us to return to, and our families and our children to return to. We have sort of 3 headline tasks which are in the headline of this meeting: rehabilitation, resilience, and renewal. We will get some compensation from the government, but we're not sure what that's going to cover yet. The situation is very dynamic. It's very early days, and to be honest, all the ideas that we had of what we need are changed. We're not the same community that we were a month ago. So the idea is to set up a fund now whilst we're still a story in the news cycle, and to be able to have those funds in a few months' time when we can better define exactly what our needs are to help our community build and regain our resilience, and to hopefully look forward to the future. So to go back to answering your question, tomorrow, when Esther and I have the links to those fund
Jeremy,
causes,
it's okay to post the Alumim one. You don't have to wait. Post the Alumim one, and people who are interested in the other will wait another day. But go ahead with it. It's fine.
I've just done that in the chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Michelle's just posted it, and we'll post the link that you just sent, and Esther, your links also when they come through. We'll share them with the community.
Thank you.
I see a hand raised, which I'll go to in a moment, but just a question that's come in via the chat, just in terms of your comfort for the recording to be shared with other leaders of other faiths and the like. Are you both okay with that? Is that
oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you.
And in doing so, another thing that I didn't mention before is that we really make a point of not bringing up our children with like hatred and a desire for revenge. We're very respectful of all religions and everybody and everything. And in fact, the recent group that came to visit us from, goodness, were they from the Philippines? And they sang in our sukkah song, praise to the Lord. I mean, what I mean is that it wasn't a Jewish community that came out, and the Holy Land belongs to everybody. Yes, I'm bumbling now. Sorry, carry on.
Thank you. Graham, I see your hand is your virtual hand is raised, so over to you.
I'm Graham Calvert. We live in South Netanya. I sit next to Sarit Kurzman's father in shul when he comes from Bet Shemesh. So she was the one with her 18-month-old child in the safe room, and I assume it was Amichai, her husband. Is Amichai who was the
Jonathan?
Jonathan is her husband. Korsman.
Was the first responder. So we're with you. We've heard all of the tragic stories. I posted a question because we've been helping with Leket, we've been helping with delivering food from the Matnas, and I went to see Neville King on Friday. As far as the harvest is concerned, we've helped. I'm not saying I personally would come down to Alumim because I'm not sure my wife would approve. It's being so close to what's still considered the danger zone. But Leket have been a great help locally. I've been picking cucumbers. I was on a strawberry field last week, helping with the parnosa of the kibbutz. Are you using Leket to help with the harvest?
Well, at the moment, certainly a large proportion of the kibbutz's fields are right by the border. We farm right up to the last furrow is on the Gaza border, so those fields are completely no-go area. The cow sheds on the kibbutz were severely damaged. They burnt 2 silos of feed for the cattle. They burnt the milking parlor. They fired bullets into the milk tank. Destroyed the computers. So the cows, we have like 700 head of cattle. They were 4 days without food.
And some were killed.
Yeah, well, yeah, few. The trucks carrying the food couldn't get to them, but very slowly they managed to get food through, water through. We asked for volunteers to help with milking. So they asked for volunteers for milking. And the head of the farm manager of Alumim said he got 700 offers of help from people who could milk cows and 700 offers from people who would massage the hands of the people who'd been milking. We've been completely overwhelmed with offers of help of any type. Psychologists, stand-up artists, people who do children's activities, people who just came along to volunteer, food, everything really. And I think if there's a sort of a tiny spark of hope in this whole story, it's a huge feeling of unity within Israel and within the Jewish world. And that, particularly in Israel, has been sorely missing over the last year. But really, we've seen a huge uniting of all our efforts all together, and that's given a lot of hope to a lot of people.
I can just give you an update on the cows because my husband is the dairy farmer here. That they normally give 40 liters of milk a day. It went down to 17 because of the trauma that they went through, and they've managed to get it up now to 30 liters a day, which is amazing already. But that comes into the rehabilitation for the kibbutz that Jeremy was mentioning before, that if people help us rebuild our milking parlor, then we'll be able to have parnasa ourselves. We'll be able to keep producing milk and keep going. Because we're not, as you mentioned, we can't do much farming, and we're mostly a farming kibbutz. We can't go out to the avocado groves, and I'm not sure that people would, because that's where most of the terrorists were. the orchards. We're very, very limited.
Thank you. I'm conscious of the passage of time, so I've had a couple of questions that have come through on the chat. But if anyone does want to ask again, please post on the chat or raise your virtual hand. Someone's written to me on the chat, actually their great distress that after everything that's happened, there's now, they hadn't understood, there's the sort of continued trauma of the hotel stay and the fragmentation of the families and the like. And again, that first of all, just expressing their love and care and for your communities, your own community and other communities that have been through so much to still sort of be in this unsettled state. And they're particularly asking, is there any way here from Chutz beyond donations? Is there anything we can do? Are there direct hosting opportunities? Around that?
It's a very good question. From Resilience, we know that the first couple of days is what we're dealing with is what's called immediate response. As like I say, checking in, figuring out who we are, etc. And then you go through a couple of days that you start telling your story and you're trying to figure out. What's also the background to all of this is that obviously in the beginning you're evacuated fine, and then after a couple of days when you've settled a bit, then you don't know how long for. And every couple of days we're told, oh, another week. Oh no, 2 weeks. Another month. Oh no, 6 months. And so each time you have to readjust. What we're now working, and also, as Jeremy said, in the very beginning, we were completely overwhelmed with people bringing us things and giving and doing, and it was magnificent. At the same time, though, that can weaken a community. Because again, in Resilience, we work with what's called like the Hanhaga, how do you say that, Jeremy? The leadership. You have to build leadership in the community to be able to do things for yourself, and to see that you're not building dependency on other people. So that's what we're doing now. So we're working the same as I'm building these resilience centers for each community. There's somebody who's helping them set up leadership, organizing schools, programs, arranging shiurim, getting the people who have been evacuated to volunteer for other people, because that, again, the whole concept is we've all got something to give. It's not just taking. So I don't know particularly of any programs that are working on. There might be some way of, I don't know, kind of like adopting one of the kibbutzim. I'm not sure. I would say just keep your eyes on the ball and see what's going out there. The resilience program that we're putting together now is specific now for Hanukkah, but we'll have loads of things that we need to be doing. Some of those will be on Alumim, some of those will be in my center. Just my team. I've already we were 16 workers, and now I've got 180 workers. So I don't know. It's all constant, and we're constantly writing books and playing games and. So if you have ideas in that department, I'll be very happy. But if I know of anything, I will push it through to Michelle.
Thank you, and I'm conscious our time has come to an end here, and it's later. It's 2 hours later, obviously, in Israel. Simply to say that, first of all, obviously, thank you, Michelle, for bringing this evening together and for making this happen. But primarily to you, Jeremy and Esther, thank you for sharing. Please pass on to the rest of the kibbutz here in faraway London. We are with you. We are understanding a little bit, hearing a little bit, and doing our best to understand and really only sending love and care and tefillot. And your strength is remarkable, and your strength. And also your ability to talk about vulnerability and weakness also is its own type of strength, and the emunah, the faith, the determination to get through this, and the way you both in different ways express that choice every morning to get up, to carry on, to continue. It's not just the way you shared, I think, with us, that this isn't just about being passive victims of such an awful attack, but actually choices that you continue to make to to go on and to rebuild and to renew. Thank you so much for that, and really we wish you only strength and good things going forward. Please God.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank
Just
you.
keep
Thank
us in
you
mind
very,
when you
very
say the prayer for the state of Israel.
We are. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you.
Good night.